Boy, oh boy, does the church have a bad relationship with money.
If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing.
We've got a bad track record with it, too. How often have you heard of pastors embezzling funds that are supposed to be used for something good, and instead they're using it for like private jets or mansions or something?
Do you ever use your private jets to go visit your vacation homes, for example?
Yes.
How many times have you heard a church preaching a message that essentially says, if you give us your money, then God will make you rich?
Money is not the focus of our life. It never has been.
Isn't it easy to say that if you're loaded? I mean, most of your parishioners, they don't have anything like this kind of money. Is there a contradiction there between saying, God wants us all to be rich, if actually you're the only rich guy standing there?
Yeah. None of that theology plays out. That is not at all what Jesus believed and taught and preached about money. And that's what we're talking about this week. Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching. Hello all, welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live, but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I'm the pastor of Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Andrew, and I'm the lay leader of Kindred UMC.
I'm Taylor, and I'm the resident non-binary gay exploring candidate.
I
am.
Because every church was required to have at least one.
Diversity points, come on. Check it off.
So we are continuing our series called Reasons People Hate the Church. And I asked several, hopefully of you, if you're watching, about why people are at least put off by the idea of Christianity and joining a Christian community and faith in general in the West and in our particular context, the state of Florida. And got lots and lots of answers. As I began to address them and study and do all that, I found that there's this one sermon in Matthew 23 where Jesus kind of addresses basically all the big ones that were listed by the answers that I got from that question. And so today we're going to continue studying that sermon where Jesus is talking to not only his followers and people who have been kind of shunned and excluded, tax collectors, sex workers, the sinners and the tax collectors is kind of the biblical phrase. But he's also talking to the powers that be. He's also talking to the Pharisees and the scribes and the folks who had done the excluding of those people. And so he gets pretty rough with them. And so this is in the middle of that sermon. If you want to hear the other parts, go look at that video over there, that series of videos over there. And you can hear what the previous parts of this sermon are. But we are in Matthew 23, 16 through 22, I believe. And it sounds like this. Jesus talking to that mixed crowd. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the sanctuary is bound by nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the sanctuary is bound by the oath. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold of the sanctuary that has made the gold, or the sanctuary that has made the gold sacred? And you say, whoever swears by the altar is bound by nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that is on the altar is bound by the oath. How blind you are! For which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So whoever swears by the altar swears by it and by everything on it. And whoever swears by the sanctuary swears by it and by the one who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by the one who is seated upon it. Questions, comments, interpretation?
I basically need you to read that like I'm 3.
I know. I get it.
Because I was with you, and then I was like, not with you anymore.
Yeah.
I felt like I could really hear the context that I was missing, because he kept saying things like,
I can hear the things that are absent.
Yeah, it's like,
It was a very read between the lines kind of vibe.
You say to swear by the altar is not good enough or whatever, but swear by the gifts on the altar is what they want you to do, and he's saying that that's bad.
Yeah.
Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, you kind of got it. So, first of all, for all the biblical literalists out there, this goes directly against something that Jesus already said in Matthew chapter 5, where he says, don't make any oaths, don't swear by anything. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. And now he's saying, swear by this and swear by that. So you just, everybody stop being literal about everything and start asking yourself, what was the intent and the purpose behind the writer? If you do that, you have a chance of actually discovering the kingdom of heaven and cooperating with it. All right, I digress. Okay, so that's my one mandatory per week where I tell everybody to stop reading the Bible so dang literally. So here's what's going on. There's this controlling class, the scribes and the Pharisees. The Pharisees in particular are the ones who are Jesus really doesn't like them, and they are essentially saying, hey, if you want to swear an oath, but an oath that you don't want to swear, because you got to remember the temple is like the center of not just religious life, but like life in general for the Israelite people during this time period. So, hey, if you want to get away with swearing an oath and not following the oath, then you can swear by the gold, or by the gift you leave on the altar. And so if you leave a gift on the altar and you swear by it and you don't follow through on that, then we get to keep the gift of the altar. So let's say you bring in a goat that is, goat meat, because every time you would sacrifice on the altar, it would be like a meal for everybody. So, all right, you bring in a goat and you're like, listen, I gotta swear that I didn't sleep with my neighbor's wife, okay? But I did. So here's a goat. Leave that on the altar. I swear by the goat on the altar, I didn't commit adultery with my neighbor's wife. And they're like, wink, wink. And then you now keep the goat, and that's my so swearing by the gift or swearing by the gold was like indulgences, basically. It's like how you pay for, and so this was a way for the scribes and the Pharisees to receive gifts and receive gold, and then kind of alrighty, and now you don't have to follow that, so no worries, and you're still good with God, and everything's fine. So it was a way for them to collect things and also let other people off the hook for their bad behavior.
This is giving me anxiety.
And so I want to talk about greed in the church. So first of all, you said it's giving you anxiety. Will you please just offer your initial reactions to what's going on there?
We have a variety of listeners, so I'm not going to name names. But there's someone out there that this story is really reminding me of, and I think that's what's it's giving me
You mean like a church leader?
Like a political candidate that is doing things and getting off the hook with them because of what that person is giving to the world. But it aside from that, it gives me anxiety because it's very real, and it's very real to what's happening right now. Everywhere, with churches, with non-churches, with people in general. I feel like all of humanity is just kind of we'll do this to get rid of this, and then we're fine, everyone's good. I have
a suspicion that I know exactly the candidate you are talking about, but I do want to, yes, and also I do want to press in but I can't think of a single political candidate that doesn't do that.
Right. That doesn't do it.
Yeah,
there's just one very prominent one that's happening right now. That's
we're given these choices between is there any honest? Is there an honest puck out there?
Yeah. I think there's just there. To me, when I was hearing this, the first thing that happened to me is people using almost Christianity to oath to get rid of everything they're doing. And that's why I'm talking about that candidate in specific, because selling $60 Bibles and crazy stuff like that to get rid of all these, to try and make up for the fact that these bad things are happening. If that makes sense. I don't know if I'm wording it right.
No. Can we let's just be honest. You were talking about Donald Trump, who is
absolutely,
who is claiming Christianity, and I don't know anyone's heart.
Right.
I don't.
We don't claim to. We don't claim to know.
I do not get the sense that either one of the presidential candidates currently running for president has any real. I think they're both just saying whatever they think they have to say to win.
Yeah.
That's sort of what U.S. politics are.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. Like, and there's really no other option.
I don't believe for a second that Donald Trump is a devout man of faith who has come to understand the truth of the kingdom of heaven through the grace of Jesus Christ. No, I think this is a tactic and an angle.
Yeah.
And again, to be fair, because I think the same thing about Kamala Harris. We've seen many of her points change ever since she became an actual candidate for president.
Yeah.
So like.
Nobody's perfect. I'm just using an example specifically about the Christianity that he's using.
Well, the
angle that he took specifically.
The Christianity thing is funny for me particularly because I know a lot of Christians who bought it, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't buy it.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like I'm gonna change my angle to fit this story, so that way all of that doesn't seem as bad as it was.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I am not. I genuinely am remaining pretty agnostic in this particular election. I have one in particular issue for me that I have not heard a candidate sufficiently address yet.
Yeah.
And it is the most important issue to me, and it is Israel's war against an entire people group.
Yeah.
And I have not heard and I would be willing to give my vote to a candidate who would address that in a sufficient way and make a significant commitment to ending that war. And at the very least, I don't want my money involved in killing innocent women and children. So
we're gonna pin that because I heard a question about that later.
Anyway, I'm getting wildly off topic because what I really do want to talk about. I think what you're saying is relevant to this particular text. There's something that is disingenuous about this, and that is. Like viscerally upsetting because we're talking about and I think that this is where Jesus is coming from too.
Yeah.
He gets really kind of pissed off because it's like you're supposed to be the ones with the utmost integrity. You're supposed to be the ones we're counting on. Yeah. And yet all of this has turned into a scam.
I feel that way about a lot of pastors too though.
Well, and first of all, I think we got your reaction. What's your just general reaction to that particular thing? And then we can talk about like now times.
Yeah.
The now times.
I think for me, I'm aware of the fact that the Pharisees were corrupt in many ways, and that was one of the main reasons why Jesus was on, essentially a crusade in this sense. But hearing it compared to
before it was popular.
Hearing it compared to indulgences just made it all like click in my brain because it's like this same thing has plagued, religion in general for sure, but Christianity specifically, it's caused so many major issues because like that's the entire like thing that got Protestantism started. That's what Martin Luther was fighting so hard against. And so it fractured the church, and it's, like you said, it's still a problem today, and it's continuing to fracture people, and it's continuing to push people away. And so it's one of those things that it's just so frustrating to hear that it's been a problem for over 2,000 years, and people keep falling for the same stuff. Like,
yeah.
And by that, I mean the people keep falling for the allure of money over the things that they are supposedly standing for.
I agree with you, and I would say it also it goes. There's like subset umbrellas that contain multitudes. The one overarching umbrella that this particular sermon and I hope this series of conversations that we're having, that they all come down to this deep human desire for a like a mechanical, legalistic understanding. If I do this, then I know that I'm okay. If I do this, I know I'm okay. So like
very black and white.
Yeah, if I follow these rules and do these things, then and there's no real way to actually like prove that.
Yeah.
And so they're relying on the people up there with the fancy clothes on and that are slightly higher than the rest of us, who are saying, yes, if you do that, you are okay. And they're neglecting, and this we'll get into, because this is actually the language that Jesus uses. You're neglecting the greater matters of the law, which are mercy and justice and grace. And there's something about the human need for it to be, I need to know that I know that I know. Otherwise, I might be like out of step with God, and I don't want God to be mad at me. And it's so much more difficult for people to accept the actual good news, which is there's nothing you can ever do that will ever separate you from the grace and the love of God. God is always for you. And even when God is, quote unquote, punishing, God is not punishing in the sense that other petty, vengeful gods are taking joy in your displeasure. God is disciplining, God is correcting. Even when that happens, God is still for you and in your corner and wants you to be in the kingdom. And like, people just can't seem to get, like, that's such a hard truth that everyone just doubts because, because of all kinds of reasons, because we all have serious insecurities, and because we all wake up sometimes in the middle of the night and I go, I can't believe I said that. I'm such a piece of garbage. And like, we all have those things, and it's really hard to accept that this perfect, loving God is like, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I still want you in. I still want you to be part of this. Like, that's the overarching truth. And so instead of accepting that gospel, what we would much rather accept is, can I just pay the price? Can I just pay this?
Yeah. Can I get it over with?
Yeah. I'll bring you a goat. You tell me I'm okay. And then that'll be that, that makes
sense to them.
Right.
That fits the paradigm that they've lived with.
The transaction is like something you can at least kind of like hang your hat on when you come home at night. Yeah. And you go like, oh, dodged a bullet on that one. Now I can trust that God isn't out to send me to hell forever, Yeah. So when have you seen things like this in the current modern day expression of Western Christianity?
I think mega churches is the obvious, easy answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know who we're talking about.
They're pretty guilty of it.
Yeah.
The Tuba Demons. I probably won't edit it in, but I always think of it's two millionaire televangelist pastors who are talking about and justifying their private jets because there's no way that they could pray and talk to God on a commercial airliner. It is the rays don't get through.
It's like a cell phone. If there's too many people in the same area, like, it just doesn't get through.
Yeah, so, right. Yeah.
They got to be on their own, so it can really.
That's the craziest thing. That's crazy. I've never heard that. That's crazy.
Oh, I'll show you the video.
You got to, because that's wild.
It is legitimately some of the craziest bull
shit.
I'm not allowed to say it. It's insane to watch these, and the sincerity.
They mean it.
Right.
They think it. They believe it.
It's like, yes, of course.
I do think they've lied to themselves long enough that they've convinced themselves. Because I believe I can't imagine a world where these people started out and went like, oh, I have to get a private jet so I can talk to God. It was, they wanted all these things, and then they lied to themselves and rationalized it to themselves in order to make it work.
Yeah. I think there's something about the like, well, I have to keep up my preaching schedule because I need to go and tell all of every time I talk, people are coming to God. And so I need to go, and like what's really happening is every time you talk, you're convincing desperate people to give you money in the hopes that they'll be okay. It's the same transaction that Jesus is literally preaching against in this text. So how do we, because, Kindred UMC at its very core, attempting to reform, I think. I mean, that's not a word that I'd planned on saying, but the more I think about it, the more I think it really fits. Reform the ways that we do church so that we can get to genuine discipleship. And when I say discipleship, I mean people who act, think, and treat others the way Jesus did. And, private jets is not among those ways, like that's not discipleship.
I can't even fly higher than economy.
Yeah. I've finally gotten to the place in my life where I can get premium economy.
Love
and
that.
It's very nice.
As you should. Because you're a pastor and you believe it.
Well, and I'm also like long-legged, and it makes a big difference when you have to fly to France.
Yeah, no, it gives you more signal for your prayers.
It gives you more.
It does. Yeah, I can really tune into that God signal.
The God meter.
Yeah. How do we do this while also, because there is something too, it's good for us to give.
Yeah.
So because a lot of this comes down to tithing and giving, and it is good for people to practice that. It really genuinely is, it helps people stay grounded in who they are as a loved person of God rather than what they accomplish. It also does good things. Like it is a resource that the church sustains itself by. Make sure you're giving to a church you really trust and believe in. And also, everything, we are fortunate enough to be funded by an investment fund. So everything that we collect goes directly to helping, in particular right now, a community in Rwanda under the program of Zoe Empowers. And then at other times during the year, we support, it used to be a children's home, now it is Residing Hope, which is essentially an orphanage in the state of Florida. So we're fortunate enough to be able to do that, but also there's just something to hey, you should give money because it is good for you to say, I am not defined by this, and it needs to go to there are people who are in need more so than I am, and a part of what I earn that God gives me to earn. There is a health. So how do we keep all that in balance? Yes, you down front.
Me. Two very important things for me that have changed my view on tithing since being here. The first thing is you tell us, or the church tells us exactly where our money is going.
Yeah, and tells us.
That is the biggest changer and difference between when I was trying to tithe at my old churches and then actually being able to give here. Is having that, this is exactly where it's going. I can research where it's going. I can look, I can see it leaving. You know what I mean? I can see it going somewhere good. And the second thing is not forcing people that can't do it right now to do it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right.
In my old churches, it was always even if you can give $1, I'm I don't even have $1. You know what I mean? I was a 19-year-old trying to balance and reconcile the fact that I make not enough money to survive, but also I'm supposed to be giving to this church where I don't know where my money's going, but I have bills to pay. So at least what I've experienced here is you have to make sure you're afloat, and then whatever's extra that you don't need to pay bills.
I would say so, because what I've heard preached in other places is 10% the minimum.
Yeah,
that's the law,
and that was scary.
You give 10%.
Yeah,
and that's not how I got into tithing at all. That was way too high a goal, and it was off-putting. It's well, then I might as well not give anything.
Right.
And thankfully, I grew up in a church and was taught this by other pastors. I started tithing by this is after I had a job and while I was still going to college, but I was every time because this is back before we had direct deposit. This is when I would literally have to take my check and deposit it. Yeah. And then I would always ask for a little envelope of $10 bills, and that was my tithe. It wasn't a 10%, but it was I started at 10. I can do $10 a week.
Yeah.
I know I can do $10 a week. And I'll just, that back then that was two eating out at a restaurant.
Yeah.
Because I'm old.
Because $10 now is not the same.
Yeah, food used to cost less,
Yeah.
But $10 a week. That's where I started. And it was just...
And that was never explained to me. It was always, you do 10% or you do nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it was like a very black and white. Like,
and then as I grew and as
your career grows and as
I
your things
graduated
happen.
college, so obviously I got a raise and got, I was working more hours and I could afford more and all this stuff. I also, my income increased, but also my expenses increased. And I just did more math and it was like, oh, I can do that. And I remember at some point there was I can get to a tithe, but I'm going to have to give up something. And this is all right. Okay. This is how God works. I was divorced, newly divorced, very lonely, trying to combat why do I feel so desperately afraid when I'm lonely? It's not just like, oh, I'm lonely. It's like, oh, I think the world's going to end.
Yep. What's
going on here? The last thing for me to get to a full tithe,
You mean a 10%, I'm assuming. Okay.
Right, 10%. The last thing that would have made that budget work was I had to give up cable TV.
Oh, yeah.
And then I realized, as I was kind of doing this math, giving up cable TV wasn't, who cares? Whatever, I have the internet. What it was that's what I put on to not feel alone when I go home. I don't have to decide what I'm going to watch. I just put on the TV and it makes me feel less alone. And it was a coping mechanism. And it was like this revelation that this is the next place that God wants me to confront. And that was done through tithing.
Yeah.
So there really is something. I'm not saying it's bad to give money to the church. I'm saying it's bad when the church misuses its authority and becomes greedy, and all of a sudden the money's buying private jets and comfort
and huge churches that buildings that are crazy.
Yeah, that is bad. Giving to a church you can trust is not bad. It is good for you. Giving to a church that is just going to make itself rich and promises that if you give, you will become rich and you can get off the hook for all of your others, that is bad. And Jesus just said so. So, all right, we're out of time. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.